Welcome everybody to the very first episode, Mark the Mark, with my colleague, Fancy Boy, Ken Stabler.
What we have here is a very interesting matchup. I think we're going to see a lot from the champion, Diesel.
And what we're talking about is Monday Night Raw from April 3rd, 1995. Now, we haven't watched this in, I guess about 15 years. But we're going to be watching it for your entertainment today.
I don't know about you, but I feel like the name Davey Boy is super gay. Before gay was cool.
I like everything with boy after it. Anything with a boy after it makes it exciting. Davey Boy, Davey Boy's his real name.
No, not the boy.
Yeah, when his parents wanted him to be named Davey, and he's in the hospital, and they thought that it was like a gender field, and so they put in boy, but it was his middle name, so he's Davey Boy Smith.
I do not believe that for a second.
That's the legend.
You're trying to tell me strict people like those, British people are going to put boy as a middle name.
Now, I can concede to that seeming far-fetched. However, they're also raised a son who entered into pro wrestling in his mid-teens. So maybe they were a little loosey-goosey on their parenting.
All right, that's a pretty fair point. I'll take that.
So this Monday Night Raw is live from the Mid-Hudson Civic Center. Any idea where that is?
Actually, yeah, I think it's in New York, right?
It probably is. It sounds familiar, but if you look at their schedule, they ran upstate New York, where both of us are from, quite frequently. They would play in Utica, Syracuse, Binghamton, Albany, get out to Buffalo, but they made that loop pretty often. Did you go to live events when you were young?
No, I didn't go to many live events, but I'm super excited to see Vince McMahon as the announcer. He's my favorite announcer of all time.
I like that he's wearing a Raw branded turtleneck.
Yeah, man, he's all in. This guy goes all in. I love Vince. I hope Lawler's around.
Lawler always picked on him for having a toupee. And so growing up, I thought he actually had a toupee, but I don't think he does.
No, that's what makes it funny.
That is a funny thing to just start a rumor on somebody like that.
This guy always annoyed me. Always.
He had no shot. Just his facial expressions were so annoying that there was no way he was going to get over with the fans.
And he never really did anything cool. Like, he has the capabilities. His body looks like he could do it, but he never did.
Well, it's a gimmick that makes sense. Look at him. Here they're showing a flashback to him getting in his race car. So we're supposed to be made to believe he is a nationally ranked race car driver. But
I have to interrupt you. 1, 2, 3 Kids in here. Super underrated, one of the best wrestlers of all time.
I'm gonna have to disagree on that. These two marks actually had the tag team championship together. This just shows how bad pro wrestling was at this period in time. You're gonna get really excited for this.
Oh man, dude, do you understand?
One match.
Do you understand that we have the 1, 2, 3 Kid and Hakushi in one match, and it's the first match? This is gonna be a really good episode. It's not their fault that Vince overlooked them. 1, 2, 3 Kid and Hakushi are easily two of the best wrestlers to ever grace this organization.
He was like a ballet dancer. He was so light on his feet that he's mesmerizing to watch.
I like how he enters the ring too. Super unassuming.
He's an assassin before people knew that was what an assassin was like. He's a mixed martial artist before that was a real thing. Now, what they went a little over the top with, he's got the tattoos all over his face, but then his bandana also has tattoos on it.
Yeah.
And his manager, did you see his face paint? They kind of tried to do a Paul Bear gimmick there, but just made him super white. Like, what's that?
It's unnecessary. But I wonder how long it took to paint all those tattoos on Hakushi's body at all times. Like, because every show he had that.
Yeah, I'm going to venture to bet that he didn't shower much just because of the hassle to reapply those tattoos.
Oh man, how bad do you think he smelled?
Pretty bad. He smelled. I bet Ahmed Johnson could shower right before the match, still come out stanking.
The people's champ.
He just strikes me as somebody that wouldn't go through the effort of doing laundry on a regular basis.
What do you think the percentage is that they started matches like this? Always a tie up and a headlock. There's a lot, at least in the ones that I've seen.
It was pretty formulaic back then. But look at Hakushi. So graceful. Now, why is the 1-2-3 kid even there?
He's supporting his buddy.
They went through a period of time where about half the matches, it felt like, somebody would come in and interfere. So you never got a clear-cut decision on who won the match.
The 1-2-3 kid has a cool voice too.
Can't say that I really remember his voice.
Like he looks like he would have a bad voice, but he has like an interesting voice. Here we go again. Headlock, ropes. Oh, Hakushi's turning the tables early. Picking up the speed. Oh.
Sometimes you just have a lapse of thought when you're running across the ropes and you just smash into each other. Yeah, sorry. How tall do you think Hakushi is?
I gotta see him again next to Holly. 5'9", 5'8".
I was thinking 5'8" was, yeah. Doesn't look very big. I can remember thinking wrestlers were so big and so strong. So to put this in perspective, this is 1995. So we were in like 5th grade in April, right? Yeah. So about 5th grade in school. So that's where we were when this stuff was coming out. And I remember getting into an argument with someone in my class saying,
spinning kick.
We're all so big and so strong. Point that if you saw a 1-2-3 kid walking in the room, everybody would stop and be like, "Look at that muscular guy."
Well, listen, I'm a 1-2-3 kid fan, but I don't know about that.
I just thought that they were on another level. I thought, okay, so here's Yokozuna coming down with Owen Hart down to the ring. My brother is probably part of the reason that I have had that thinking. My brother told me that these guys are all so graceful and they're the best athletes in the world that Yokozuna could do a backflip standing there and land on his feet no problem.
Dude, you know what's hilarious about that? I had those same stories growing up, and we grew up in 2 different towns.
Yeah, man. There was like a legend that came out about these guys, and nobody really knew what they were talking about. There was no internet to fact check anything.
How much do you attribute? I know it's not a lot, but like how much it did contribute to the UFC success in the way that it got people interested in combat. Like, because nobody watched the Olympic wrestling, nobody watches kung fu or taekwondo, but after this, then the UFC came and it just exploded. It's got to have some sort of factor.
Yeah, it's a feeding ground, right? It's a process where this was made for kids. So as kids, you're used to watching people compete in the ring against each other, but there's high entertainment level, there's colorful outfits, and there's flashy moves. And then you get a little older and you're like, oh, this is a little hokey. And then you're naturally just filtered right into the UFC. So yeah, it's got to be a huge part of its success.
You have to give these guys credit though. Like, there's certainly a ton of athletic moves just in this one match, and this is like the undercard match.
These are the best guys on their roster as far as being able to do moves. They didn't translate like if you put Sid, who is at the top right now, Sid and Diesel, they're just big guys. The top was for guys, but they couldn't really move. And then they would fill out the card with these type. Yokozuna was so fat at this stage.
And back then though, big was the thing. Like, remember like the kids in our school in high school, they wanted to be the biggest ever.
Yeah, you talk about how much the WWF influenced UFC or led to the success. But think about how much it just changed everybody's life. In my school growing up, in your school, everybody had the perception, and I can remember this from older kids too. If you were bigger, you were stronger, you were tougher. but nobody knew how to actually fight. If you were just bigger, everybody was scared of you.
Can you
So
just
bigger
pause? Can you look in the first row of the fans there? Like, what kinds of fans are these? This, I gotta see that lady again. Oh, there's definitely an art to falling. If I had fallen back like that, I would have busted my head.
I don't even know what that was. He just jumped off the top rope and just splashed right into the ground.
Yeah, it looks like it hurt him more than Hakushi.
The reason why these videos are interesting is it's painful to go back and watch these videos, but it's fun to hear people talk about them. So this is the first video that we're doing in a larger series that we're going to go back and we're going to relive all the Monday Night Raws. But I truly feel like it's fun to hear what's going on, but it's a little painful to sit and watch these matches.
Yeah, because that's why I love Vince and Lawler, because they made it so much more fun. Look at this.
One thing that I always wish that they would do is have more not squash matches. Like they would always bring out the jobbers and have squash matches, but when actual guys fought other like named people, so like in this match, it'd be awesome just to see Hakushi dominate, right? Like they work on a part of the body and he's clearly better on that given day. But they always have to go, okay, Bob Holly has his run and for a couple minutes he's winning. And then something happens like that where Yokozuna trips him and now Hakushi's going to have his run where he's winning.
I know, but that's because, like you said, it's for kids.
But even as a kid, I remember being really annoyed by that. It was just too much back and forth. Like sometimes, let's say Yokozuna's fighting Bob Holly. I'd want to see Yokozuna just come in there and squish Bob Holly. And it's like, okay, well, Bob Holly his size, competing against Yokozuna, he's just no match for him. But then Bob Holly could fight somebody else and have, different amount of luck, or maybe comes back and comes up with a better game plan and has a better match with Yokozuna. But like some strategy. Everything was just the exact same match. You could fill in 1, 2, 3 Kid for Bob Holly, fill in Yokozuna for Sid. It was the same match. Or Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yeah, you're right. But that was entertaining to people.
I wonder how many people bought that Lawrence Taylor t-shirt. I had a real problem with Lawrence Taylor. Do you remember when he came in for WrestleMania 11?
Yes, and I remember your problem too.
Did you have the same problem?
I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I really, really, really hated the Floyd Mayweather one.
Yeah. I was kind of not watching wrestling anymore at that point, so I just saw it on the periphery. But the Lawrence Taylor, I was all in, and I remember just being very I was disappointed, and I was like embarrassed as a wrestling fan. So here you have Bam Bam Bigelow, who they're billing as one of the top wrestlers, and he comes in and he's going to fight Lawrence Taylor. Granted, he's a football guy, whatever. But from the wrestling fan standpoint, as a little kid, you may or may not know much about him at all. But to say that he can come in on day one and beat one of the top guys, it just makes the whole thing like, oh, well, why wouldn't he just come in and train for a couple months and he'd be the champion? He'd be the best wrestler. And if he can do it, probably half the other guys in the NFL can.
Right, because it just goes to show you didn't need any skill. Like, I was okay with the Mike Tyson thing. I didn't watch it because I had stopped watching by that point. But at least Tyson's one of the best boxers of all time.
And he wasn't in an actual match. He just hit Shawn Michaels after Shawn Michaels had a match. And you could say, oh, maybe it was a cheap shot or whatever. But like, look at this picture here is Lawrence Taylor doing a bulldog on Bam Bam Bigelow, like actually doing wrestling moves. He looks bigger than Bam Bam Bigelow, which also bothered me, going back to that earlier comment of thinking wrestlers were just bigger than anybody else in the world. I thought Bam Bam Bigelow, if he walked into a room, he'd be the biggest person you've ever seen.
It would have been okay if they built up a backstory about LT being a former wrestler or something like that, but
that's what they needed to do. They needed to say that he has a reputation as the toughest football player there's ever been. No other football players can compare. If anybody, most football players would get destroyed by Bam Bam. And then they should have had some matches, right, with some lesser-known football players leading up to WrestleMania where Bam Bam comes and destroys them. So it's like Bam Bam, part of the story would be, isn't taking it serious because it's just a football player. But then LT surprises him. That I could get behind.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look at
That's
Bam Bam
commitment,
though.
tattooing your head like that.
I have to imagine he tattooed his head before this.
What do you think that decision was? Come to think about it, I don't remember ever seeing Bam Bam Bigelow without the tattoo. So yeah, it could have been before his wrestling. That would be an interesting thing.
It
Uh,
looked pretty faded. Oh,
he
Bob Backlund. I hated Bob Backlund. Roddy,
sure.
the legend.
Hey there, little boy. I see what you're doing. It's Roddy Piper. Okay.
And the worst wrestler of all time, Bret the Hitman Hart. Super annoying. Oh, I'm going to carry my belt on my shoulder like this.
If you appreciate Hakushi, you should appreciate Bret. Bret's movements were delicious.
I'm not talking about his movements. I'm talking about his attitude. His attitude was annoying. He's
I
like he's that little weasel jock in high school who takes it way too seriously.
Yeah, but just never has any friends because he's putting all of his commitment into training. Where he doesn't have as much natural talent as call it a Shawn Michaels, but Shawn Michaels is going out, he's partying, he's having other things going on in his life. Bret is just running up the stadium stairs. He's constantly doing calisthenics. He's
Yes.
just whatever he can to
Yes.
feel better, and it pays off.
It does pay off, and I'm not saying he wasn't a good wrestler. What I'm saying is he's annoying.
And he also had his parents, all of his siblings were in the wrestling business. So he grew up with it. So from day one, he had all of these training. He was just in a very regimented training. But if you just take natural athleticism, he doesn't compare to somebody like Shawn Michaels or any of the bigger guys either.
In future shows, we might want to fast forward through all the downtime.
Well, it's a good opportunity to talk about other stuff.
That's true. Big Daddy Cool. See, Big Daddy Cool is the man. He carries his belt, drags it on the ground because he knows that it's not about the belt, it's about him. That's something Bret never understood.
I find it very disrespectful to the championship.
No, I like that about a person. He did the work. He beat all the guys. He's the man. Screw the belt. With or without the belt.
There is a little bit of edge to it, right? He does show, hey, I still care about it. I carry it to the ring. But it's also, it gives you the mindset at any given point, I just throw it down to the side. I take care of business.
Yes.
Growing up, I always had one piece of respect for Diesel, and it was that he's doing it right with his costume. He wears pants into the ring. I always thought, because I wanted to be a pro wrestler, but I was always uncomfortable with the idea of wearing tights into the ring. And then when I saw Diesel come in, I was like, oh, now that's because before that I was going under Lex Luger. I started watching about 1993. So Luger had come in as the narcissist gimmick where he had the Speedo, but then he had like a little piece of fabric that went over top, similar to like Tatanka. So Tatanka and Lex Luger, I was like, okay, I could guess I could do something like that. But then I saw Diesel, and that was like, what a smart man.
Yeah, Diesel was the man. I like Diesel at this time period.
It's kind of funny. As a wrestler, you have to have a certain facial hair, and then you got to stick with it. You never saw Diesel cut off and go with just straight up mustache or full beard. It was just always the goatee when he was in the WWF.
Yeah, in his heyday. These interviews are brutal, though. Look at, he's just standing there.
Well, I'm not hearing what they're saying, but it just looked like a very long, awkward pause where they're both trying to figure out what to say.
Look at Vince. Vince looks like he could be a butcher. Like he could own a butcher shop.
And like he'd get really mad when kids come in and like mess with things. He's one of those guys that he'd be really funny for the kids too. Like he loved to play up for the kids, but when things started getting stressful and kids were coming in too much, then he'd flip out on them.
Yeah, his face would turn bright red.
He's a little bipolar in how he handled kids. I wonder how many times Vince sat back and thought, what am I doing with this? Like, it's kind of cool. I built this business, but when I'm out here, I just have no passion for pretending anymore.
You think he thought that? I don't think he thought that at all.
You think he just solely built this world and he just
Yeah, I think he's a little bit like L. Ron Hubbard, where the guy who created Scientology. Like he went deep into this, and he just has this world, and he's all in.
it is kind of funny. He almost seems like he doesn't know anything outside of the wrestling world. Like he just is that.
Do you remember that interview? He did an interview in one of those talk shows where someone asked about it being fake, and he just freaked out on him. We got to find that. We should
Remember
react to that.
confrontational interviews that he did have. Oh my God. Do you remember Well Done?
No, actually, I don't.
Well, and Stephen Dunn, I believe their names were.
Wow, she was in good shape.
Blaze, yeah, she was. She was. It was kind of a weird thing because they had a women's division, which was her, and then they would bring in some foe, and she'd work with that foe for 3-4 months, beat them, and then it would go on to the next one. But there was never a collection, a contingent of a half a dozen or a dozen women. It was just her versus Bull Nakata, then her versus Bertha Faye.
Let me ask you about like a backstory about Vince, because from an outsider looking in, he gave a lot. He was ahead of his time, giving women chances. It doesn't matter if you're black, Asian, white. He's gonna put you out there if you can make, if you can do a show. Was that true or no? Like behind the scenes, like did he screw them over in the pay? Like what? How'd that work?
My guess is he was all business first, right? And didn't care. Whatever he could do, he didn't care about exploiting or not exploiting. He didn't care about racism or he just if it made the product better, he was good for it, and he didn't care
but
if it was a racist
was
angle.
the pay equal? Was the pay equal though?
Probably. Why not, right? I see him as being like fair in that regard. If you're drawing, you got top dollar. I could be wrong. We could easily make a video of all of the very racist angles that pro wrestling, especially the WWF,
I mean, if we're gonna be all about business, we might as well, because that would get a lot of hits.
So this is 1995 as part of their new generation, and what they started doing around this time was really exploiting jobs. So maybe they were trying to get away from the nationalities and the stereotypical race type things. So I don't think they were playing as much. Like when we were kids, that was less of an issue as it was a generation before. If you were Italian versus Irish versus English versus whatever, right? I mean, they would play into it. Like, here's the British Bulldog. They'd obviously play up that because he had an accent, so they could portray that. But they didn't say
Luger missed it.
Whatever. Luger was a bad wrestler. He was my favorite growing up. I loved him. Objectively looking back at it now, he doesn't bend right. His knees don't bend all the way. He's very stiff. Watch him move. He's mechanical and stiff. See how he just bumped into him in the way?
He looks like he has AIDS these days. Like, I don't know what his deal is, but if you look at him now, he looks terrible.
Man, I think he had like a stroke.
Who do you think has worse farts, Lex Luger or British Bulldog?
Bulldog. Bulldog had well, Luger just has that nasty like protein stank to him, and everything else he's pumped himself up with. But Bulldog strikes me as lazy. I've always thought that about Bulldog. He's probably one of the most talented guys that came through in this period, but he never reached his full potential. He never fully committed to it. Like he fully committed to being a wrestler. That's what he spent his time doing, but he just never got, like, if he had Bret Hart's discipline but British Bulldog's talent, he would have been the best of all time, I think.
This is towards the end of Bulldog's heyday, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this angle wasn't good. They had Lex Luger and Bulldog, who were both popular going into this arrangement where they worked together as a tag team on their own, and then they threw them together, and I remember being excited about it at this stage, but it didn't go. It was a little flat, and they were working with teams like this other team that had nothing going on. They seemed kind of like B leaguers. And then Luger, as this tag team was still going, that was when the first Nitro happened a few months from now, and he jumped ship. So he was his contract had expired. They expected him to renew, and I think he was on the episode of Monday Night Raw because it was a taped version, and then he walked out on Monday Night Nitro live. So he was on both programs at the same time. And then kind of left Bulldog with nothing to do. So then Bulldog kind of floundered for a few months, and then he turned bad. And then remember, he cut his hair. And once he cut his hair, it was over for the Bulldog. He didn't look. Some wrestlers need long hair. It's part of. If you look at Bulldog, he has those little tassels hanging off of his shoes, off of his boot. It's kind of like the Ultimate Warrior, right? The Ultimate Warrior had all of those tassels and fringe. You take that away, you cut their hair, they look normal.
What about Macho?
Yeah, you never saw Macho. Macho was a classic one of those. His outfits hanging down from the arms, even when he had the like cut off sleeve shirts, he wore like t-shirts, but he would cut up the sleeves of them and then tie them in little knots so that they had some fringe.
See, that was a relatively quick match. I like that. Like they didn't do enough of like super dominant fast matches.
Yeah. But anyway, so circling back to a conversation from a few minutes ago, that when they were starting to exploit jobs in this era, we saw Bob the Sparkplug Holly, right? There's Bull Nakata. What other jobs do we have? We had Isaac Yankem showing up not too long after this.
Oh, Isaac Yankem, yeah.
We had TL Hopper, who was the plumber.
Is that Jenny? I loved Jenny.
Hey, it's Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Didn't like him.
He's into it.
Wasn't a big Pam fan either.
I don't even remember who this guy was.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
This was a weird year. This was when the wrestling was close to its all-time lowest as far as quality and depth of the roster. So they just pumped it up with any celebrity they could latch a hold of. This guy probably was doing something around that time.
Dude, we just got on saying how good the 1, 2, 3 Kid and Hakushi were.
Yeah, but they didn't have – nobody cared about them. I mean, in hindsight, they're cool. Kind of fun going back and looking at them. But at that time, like 1, 2, 3 Kid got way more over when he was X-Pac a few years later in the Attitude Era. At this stage, everything was – like even the Bulldog and Lex Luger. Luger was in 93 fighting for the championship, even 94, so the year before at WrestleMania. But he had dropped quite a bit in popularity. Alundra Blaze, again,
a lot of the problems are the names too. Like 1, 2, 3 Kid is a crappy name. Like I could think of 5 names off the top of my head that are better than 1, 2, 3 Kid.
Here, the challenge.
Oh, I like.
If you get 2 names better than the 1, 2, 3 Kid, I'll give you a lot of credit here.
What about 3 Count?
It's not bad.
So keeping with the theme of 1, 2, 3 Kid, 3 Count.
Slight alteration. When you start calling somebody a kid, it limits their ability to be the world champion.
Or if you're gonna say kid, it has to be like notorious. So like Kid Victory or Kid Pin or something like where you're like always gonna win.
That argument, what I just said about not being the champion with the name Kid, you had the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. But if you just think of the Heartbreak Kid, if we called, let's say 1, 2, 3 Kid, his name was Heartbreak Kid, we would be talking about how that was the worst name of all time.
That's true. Well, Shawn Michaels, it suited him because he had the flair. He
was on. You could have called Shawn Michaels. You could have called him Toilet Muncher, and he would have been the champion.
Right. Because he has charisma.
These girls were so bad, though. If you watch this, I always had a hard time.
How much do you think that one girl weighs? And I'm not calling her like, I'm not fat shaming her. I'm serious. Like she looks thick. Like that one leg looks to me like it's 35 pounds.
That move, that's impressive though. Look at that. That looks painful. That submission hold.
Yeah, she looks strong.
She
I bet
is.
you think she was a former Olympic weightlifter?
Would be interesting to see what her background is. I would guess that she's probably right around the 200 mark, right? She looks maybe about 5'9", 5'10", probably about 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Alondra Blaze looks like an athlete, though.
She does.
This other girl, they probably could have done something with her costume to make her look more like an athlete. Instead, they tried to just use face paint, which, what is that?
Yeah, I never liked that about anybody, like even Goldust. I liked Goldust, but I didn't like his costume.
There's few people in history I feel like it really worked. For the Legion of Doom, you take the face paint. Even some of their earlier stuff without face paint looked pretty cool. That looked
What about
painful. Just drop right on her knees from the second
these
row.
guys? Work for these guys.
The Bushwhackers,
The Bushwhackers.
they didn't have face paint.
No, but their costumes. They needed those costumes.
I guess so. The worst tag team of all time.
They were the worst wrestlers. They had no skill.
They were old. I mean, it would be interesting to find out how old they were when they were in wrestling. But they looked like, as a kid, they could have been grandparents. They were 60-year-old men in my eyes. And they moved like that. Like, okay, they can do this, but that's not hard. That looks like somebody that's an old plumber, right? They've spent their life working with their hands, but they've been down and their knees are not really working as much anymore. But they can still do this. They still have that old man strength, but they just don't have any athletic ability when they were in the WWF.
Dude, this Yolanda girl, she is legit. Look at her moves.
I love that
She's doing
Yolanda.
She's doing flips. She's doing like these crazy rolls. I would like to see you fight her.
Dude, she just took the sharpshooter. She's like, oh no, I can't do that. That's Bret Hart's move. So I'll just go here. Oh,
that would hurt. See, that would hurt.
All right, I stand corrected. Bull Nakata is where it's at.
Yeah, why did they paint her face and her hair like that? It doesn't look good.
How does Alondra Blaze just not quit?
Yeah, Yolanda's tough, man. Do you think you can beat her up?
In her prime, in my prime, yes, easily.
What? I don't know about easily.
Easily. She's athletic. She can bend you. If you laid down on the ground and she got on top of you, you're finished, right? She has some strength to her, but
no, I'm talking about Yolanda.
Okay, I'm not sure which one you mean when you say Yolanda. The thick one or the thinner one?
The thinner one.
Oh, that's Alondra, man.
What's her name?
Alondra.
Alonda?
Alondra.
Yolandra.
Medusa.
That's the thicker girl.
No. Alondra. Before and after this, so lots of times when they would come to the WWF, Vince wanted to change their name, so it was something that the WWF owned. But she wrestled under the character Medusa. That was intense.
How do they mitigate the pain of that? Like, 'cause that looks like it hurts. Everybody. Yeah. Like laying on your butt with her, the leg on your chest with her, the whole thing hurts.
Well, I hope they show it again. I don't think they're going to show that move again, but not the giant leg drop that she just nailed her with. I don't think they mitigate the pain.
They just take it.
No, I think a lot of the guys that are professional do. Like when she just jumped off and they're showing that in the replay, she jumped to the side of her. But Bull Nakata just jumped off and just splashed her. That was painful. Which of these two you think would win in a real fight?
Probably that chick.
Which one?
The green hair.
I think Alondra would win.
I don't know, man. I don't think she has enough power.
Dang, did you see? These girls this is the best match so far by far. Did you see that?
Yeah, they're right on the mat.
German suplex on the. This is incredible. This is a 5-star match right here.
I agree. I'm saying Yolanda has some good moves.
And you know what? They're probably on the commentating doing what we did at the beginning, not giving them any credit. And that's why as a kid, I wasn't excited about these guys. Do you see that guy in the audience that's just waving?
I've been seeing there's a lot of weirdos in the audience.
Man wearing a coat, and he was just waving to them in the ring like they knew him. And he was.
You see that move?
Yeah,
that was a backflip.
I didn't think she looked athletic.
Look at that.
See, this is the problem. That's a pay-per-view match, and they just gave it to us for free on Monday Night Raw. They have no respect for these girls. And what would happen is Alundra Blaze would fight Bull Nakata for, a few months, right, on every single show. But she had and have like similar results, and then they'd get rid of her and have somebody else. They needed to build it more and have this huge showdown between the two.
Well, I guess that answers my question. So Vince gave women a chance, but he never built them up enough. So there's definitely some sexism there.
I don't know. They have
because think about it. He never really. There's never really been a star woman until recently. Yeah. Now there is. I mean, like back then.
Well, the problem is just the depth, right? There wasn't that many. I mean, if you look at what he was pulling from the available wrestlers that are out there, right? Very few came into the, Mark Henry type people that just came into the WWF and started from there. Oh, this is when Bertha Faye came out. Do you see that? She just came out of the crowd and attacked her.
Dude, there's no lighting.
Yeah, they made it look like
there we go.
She was celebrating, and this girl just came in. Okay.
Dude, and they named her Bertha.
This was the formula they used for Alundra Blaze. They would bring in these big women, and they would demolish her, and it would seem like there's no way Alundra could win, and then they would build up a program for a few months. So that's why when I just said that they wasted that having Bull Nakata lose on Monday Night Raw, this was the end of her run. So now Bull Nakata is over, and Bertha Faye is coming in to fight Alundra Blaze for the next few months.
See, and that's why, because Alundra is the only one who is awesome, because she's legit. So they had to just keep giving her foes.
Did you see how she just sold that?
They couldn't find a better woman than this woman. Like, come on.
They dressed her up in like a tutu later on. I don't know I don't remember her with this face paint. That was a great sell job. Did you see Alundra Blaze holding her face?
Yeah.
Salt and pepper.
Ugh.
It looks like the worst thing. I mean, you're so close to death. When Yokozuna's doing that bonsai drop, if he messes up, your chest is broken.
I don't know. I'd be able to keep my cool, like to sell it. Oh, there's Roddy.
I didn't like Roddy in this era. He came in and he was kind of promoting some of the shows, but he wasn't really wrestling. And I never liked Roddy Piper.
Dude, Roddy Piper's on the Mount Rushmore.
How many people are on Mount Rushmore?
I think 4.
All right, just WWF. Who you got?
Shawn Michaels.
Okay.
Macho Man. I don't like him, but you have to put the Hulk up there.
Uh-huh.
And then it gets tough. I'm not going to go into the new guys. Like, I stopped watching Before the Rock and all of them. So just from, the 90s era and the 80s. That's when it gets tough, right? I'm going to go with the Warrior.
So I go into the Rock era. So for me, it's the Rock, Stone Cold, Hogan, and the Undertaker.
Oh, the Undertaker's a good one, yeah.
I mean, I like Shawn, I like Brett better. Certainly this era is Shawn, Brett, Diesel, Undertaker. Like the 4 main guys.
Wait, who is yours again?
Hogan, Undertaker, Rock, and Stone Cold.
How do you put Stone Cold over Macho?
They were bigger. Stone Cold. Do you remember when we were in about?
All right. You know what? I do give you Stone Cold, so I'll replace Michaels with Stone Cold in mine because I forgot about Stone Cold. But
still leaving the Ultimate Warrior on there?
You got, because you know why? Here's my argument. everybody knew the Warrior and everybody knew Macho. So it transcended the actual capabilities of them. Like, they were the most popular ones.
Here's the thing. When we were growing up, it was Hogan's prime had already passed. So it's hard to deny how huge Hogan was. But Hogan started his run when we were just being born. And by 1990, he had already started to fade a little bit. And by 93, when we started to get more involved or more interested, he was out of the WWF.
Yeah, but if it wasn't for him, it never would have been as popular.
But but I agree with you. I remember before I was watching wrestling, if I could catch it, I never really knew how to find it on TV. But when I would be flipping through the channels and it would come on, I'd be excited by it or interested at least. And the Ultimate Warrior, I can remember that my neighbor had an Ultimate Warrior, one of those Wrestle Buddies.
Right.
It was the most exciting in school. And then you would go to the video store and you would see the old wrestling. Oh, dude, so I got to stop this. Look, it's in the house.
Yeah.
Remember the first In Your House?
I remember In Your House.
They just drove up to. That was what you won at the first In Your House. What a random thing. I'd love to know the backstory on that. How they got a hold of this house. They probably got some deal on it, right? It looks like it's like a one-car garage. I mean, it's whatever. It's a house, but it's, whatever. Call it, in 2020, it's probably a $175,000 house, right? They probably got it for some sort of deal, maybe even a promotion where they were going to advertise this area, and so the development gave them the house for free or for like next to nothing, right? But what do you do as a kid who's watching this? You sign up and okay, you win this raffle. Okay, now you have a house in Florida.
No, because they're not going to give it to a little kid.
Interesting. Let's see the fine print. I can't read it. I think, didn't a kid win it? Fine. Regardless, you get it today. Okay, that's like, it's cool that I won something. There's real value there, but it's also a lot of hassle. You just won a house in Florida. So
I agree with you. I mean, you have to sell it, right?
You have to sell it. You're going to pay taxes, quite a bit of taxes, because you won it as like a lottery type thing. So it's, the gambling taxes. And then you got to sell it and go through the hassle of finding it. Okay, you maybe clear $20,000, $30,000. Sid was intense.
Yeah, man, Sid was a beast.
Less was more with Sid. Having him wrestle all the time, not good. Having him come out and just look like a killer, awesome.
I really enjoyed this Shawn Sid match. I don't know when that was, but
so this might be when Sid turns on Shawn. So this is because they were showing WrestleMania highlights from the night before, and I remember this interview. Shawn comes out and he says, "Hey, I tried," and Vince is kind of putting him over and said, "You did a really gallant effort, even though he's a bad guy. You did a gallant effort against, you gave Diesel a run for his money at WrestleMania." And he says something along the lines of to Sid, "Hey, next time, take the night off. Next time, I got Diesel one-on-one," because I think something happened in the event where Sid kind of cost him the match. And Sid doesn't like it, and he goes ahead and powerbombs Shawn like 3 times in a row here. And then Shawn's out of action for, I want to say, like 6 weeks or so.
What was the reason behind that story? Did Shawn have like a surgery or something?
But then I went to the Monday Night Raw live when Shawn came back. And I can't remember how it went down, but they play his music, and the crowd just went crazy. And that was the turn when Shawn went from a bad guy to a good guy. And my stepbrother was there. Diesel came out, and they did this thing where it was like Reunited, where Shawn would put his thumb up and sign up, and then Diesel would put his hand way up in the air. Shawn would run across the ring and jump up and give him a high five. And so I had my stepbrother get onto the chair. We were down on the floor seating, and he got up on his chair, and I was running through the aisle, and I jump up and smash his hand, and it was just like an awesome moment for me.
Yeah, but then Shawn and Diesel had a a fallout.
Not for a long time. So this is when they reunited. So they had the fallout. That was the leading up to the WrestleMania 11 that just happened, I guess, the night before this. And then they got
they had that epic in your house match, remember?
Yeah, you're right. So then they did the whole two dudes with attitude, remember, and they were champs. And then Shawn became like the number one good guy, and Diesel had a heel turn when he lost his title at the Survivor Series to Bret Hart, remember? So Bret Hart, he showed a minute of compassion, and then Bret Hart did a small package, rolled him up, got the 3 count. Diesel freaks out after the match and starts powerbomb, showing him that, he kind of lost his temper, instantly makes him bad. Now that he's bad, him and Shawn have the falling out. And then after the WrestleMania match where Shawn wins the title, Diesel was the first challenger at the next pay-per-view. And they had an awesome match.
What, is Sid freaking out on Shawn right now?
So intense.
Can you imagine if you're walking up in a bar and this guy starts freaking out on you?
How scary would that be?
It'd be nuts.
Dude, why did they just fast forward? They did not show any of the part where he attacked Shawn.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a commercial break?
I guess.
Oh, that's kind of cool, right? I think they did do that, and then later in Monday Night Raw went off the air, and then like the next week they had a story to go back and be able to fill in the gaps of what happened.
Oh, so that was the end of the episode?
That was the end of the episode. See, these are the good Monday Night Raws back then, just an hour, so 46 minutes of actual viewing time.
I was pretty impressed with Yolanda, though. She was a good wrestler.
She definitely gets our performance of the night, or at least mine, if you look at performer of the night. And if I have to go who you got for match of the event?
I guess that match.
Gotta be, right? It's not going to be the Holly one.
No.
Well, Bob Holly's number 2. What was there? There was Bob Holly. There was the Allied Powers, Luger and Bulldog, versus Well Done. And then there was, we talked all the way through the Men on a Mission match. We didn't even watch them. I didn't even see who they were wrestling.
I like that they didn't show the power bombs by Sid, because that was like almost just for the audience who came.
Yeah, and it gives you, they left you in suspense, right? It went off the air, and it made it look like it wasn't planned. That there's a beautiful mastery of when they do that, where it's things. It was the same thing that they did after the Alundra Blaze match. So she's celebrating. It looks like they're about to run to commercial, and then that girl comes in when it's still dark and smashes her and starts beating her up. And then they're like, hey, hold on, hey, let's check this out. Turn up the lights, and it makes it feel more real and authentic. So they did a few things that if you're a kid, you always go back and say how hokey it was back then and everything. And there was some stuff like the Bob Holly's outfit, 1, 2, 3 Kids outfit, quite frankly, having like their names written on it. Whereas Diesel's outfit didn't feel like that. Diesel's outfit's cool, right? But
yeah, Diesel's outfit is cool.
Things that they did on this show were actually pretty impressive.
I agree.
And I think part of the reason they were able to do it is, if you think about it, again, it's 46 minutes. So you have a week to plan. That's reasonable to be able to plan. I mean, there's not that many storylines you're trying to get across. You have a few matches. They kind of explain themselves, right? They're wrestling all across the country almost every single day. So that's no problem. But then you have – did you just leave?
No.
I don't see your video.
I'm here.
Okay. My train of thought there. Oh, there you are. Oh, yeah. How easy it is to plan for an hour, right? They just had an hour. And then
they had complete creative freedom. Like, a lot of companies won't let you do that in Star Wars. Like, they won't let you make Luke Skywalker a certain way. They won't let you do this. But like in this place, they're like, whatever works, we're gonna do.
Yeah, but it is a challenge, right? To build those stories with the characters you have. You know, you have to deal with real events like injuries and things like that. So you're always kind of changing things around. Who's in the company, who's available, who's not, who's signed their contract, whose contract's coming to an end. So you got to plan for all those things. But if it's only an hour and you can fill, so with commercials, 46 minutes or 45 minutes, call it, 2/3 of that at least, more than that, probably about 35 minutes of the 45 is just matches, right? Those are easy to figure out. You win, you win. Like the Allied Powers versus Well Done, no problem, right? Allied Powers are always going to win that match, but you can show a couple little times where it gets close. Then really the only thing they were trying to get across there was WrestleMania was a great event. If you missed it, you missed out. Probably if I remember around this time, they were doing where they would do a replay of it. So they're probably trying to make it seem like it was such a good event that you buy the replay on Tuesday or whatever it was. And then the main story was the breakup between Shawn Michaels. Well, two stories. The breakup between Shawn Michaels and Sid at the end, and then the introduction, the end of one chapter with Bull Nakata, and the beginning of the new chapter with Bertha Faye on Alundra Blaze. Outside of that, that's so. I mean, if you're thinking about planning it for week to week, that's pretty easy to go there. Then next week you can talk about those two stories a little bit more. When they, a few years later, they got into the Attitude Era and WCW started doing Nitro, now you had to compete and they extended it to 2 hours and we're doing angles with each one of the matches. So you had maybe 10, 15 different angles that you were building over the course of any given show. A lot of interview time, a lot of things that you had to plan for versus just a couple matches, these two stories. So
was Nitro Monday as well?
Yeah.
See, that's a dumb move. Why compete? Make it Tuesday night Nitro, and then you get more viewers.
It would have been better for people who just wanted to see wrestling every night, but there was something about the electricity. Like Raw felt a little stagnant for a while, and then Nitro got introduced, and at first, whatever, it just seemed like a Me Too. But then once Kevin Nash and Scott Hall left WWF and went to WCW, all of a sudden WCW became more popular than WWF, and WWF had to figure out, okay, how are we going to compete against that electrifying Monday Night Wars time?
Yeah, and then they bought CW, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. If you're still with us, thank you. This is Mark the Mark with our random Raw review. We plan on going back and starting at the beginning at some point and watching all of the Raws. We'll add a few tricks to our repertoire and make this a little bit more exciting as we go along. But it's been fun.
Later.